everyone, welcome to my channel, Knit with Fi. I'm Fi, and this is my first ever YouTube video. So I'm really grateful you clicked on it. I hope that you enjoy it, and I really hope that you'll stick with me as I figure everything out. I know that making a YouTube video and making a YouTube channel involves loads of different things. All of them I am completely new to, so I know this is going to be a massive learning curve. But I really hope that you will stick by me, and I'm sure that I will improve as time goes on. In this video, I thought I would give you a little bit of some reasons why I wanted to start a YouTube channel. I thought I would also give you a little bit of my knitting background so you kind of know where I'm at and what I've done in the past, what I've still to learn, that sort of thing. And also go into how I'm going to run this channel, what my plans are for these videos. Then I'll talk a little bit about acquisitions for this month. I'm not going to go into detail about things that I have made in the past because I'll do that in other videos. But because I would like in these videos to talk about sort of what I'm spending on this hobby. I know knitting can be quite an expensive hobby, and so my plan is to keep to a budget, which is £100 a month on anything knitting. And so I think what I'll probably do is in the acquisitions section, I'll have like a running tally of where I'm at and what I've got left in the month. And yeah, so that's why I'll talk through acquisitions, and it'll be specifically things that I bought in February. And finally, I'd like to talk about what I'm working on at the moment. So that will be the last sort of section of this podcast, is the things that I'm working on at the moment. Normally I'd probably do like a what I plan to do next as well, but I think I'll have a separate video specifically around what my aims are for this year and maybe this quarter in knitting, so I'll leave that till then. And also I think as part of the acquisitions, I'll end up talking about things I plan to do in the future, because I will have bought knitting patterns for them. So I think it makes sense to go in that section. So let's get started. I'm going to start with why I wanted to make this YouTube channel. So it's quite a difficult question to answer because there are multiple reasons. The first of which is probably just because I wanted to. YouTube is my social media of choice. I use YouTube a lot for lots of different hobbies and learning things. And I've always, or for a long time, I've been interested in having a YouTube channel, but I wasn't sure what I wanted the content of that to be. And then when I picked up knitting again in October of 2024, very quickly I found that I loved it, and it would make a great topic of content for a YouTube channel. I also was really keen to document my knitting because I am right at the beginning. I'll go into more about my background later, so I'm not completely at the beginning in terms of I've never knit before, but I've just recently picked it back up again, and so I really wanted to document from quite early on in my knitting journey. I also thought it was just a nice central place where I can put what I'm up to, and people I know can choose whether to watch it or not. But if other people also want to watch it, that's absolutely brilliant, and that's great. I think the other reason I wanted to do this was because when I did get into knitting again, I found YouTube brilliant. I first started using it as a learning tool to remind myself of how to cast on, how to cast off, how to increase and decrease, that kind of thing. But very quickly I found YouTubers and podcasts and things like that not only taught me loads of stuff, but also made me feel part of a community, which I really enjoyed and I found really great. It's also just really great to see what other people are up to. It's a great source of patterns that I never would have found otherwise, or yarns that I never would have tried otherwise, and that kind of thing. So I've just found YouTube really great, and I thought that, you know, if I could be that for one person, even, that would be great. If I could make someone, if I could help someone along in their knitting journey, or if I could make them feel part of something, or if, yeah, I could bring them joy, basically, that would be absolutely brilliant. So that's another reason that I wanted to make a YouTube channel. Going on to my background in knitting, I just let Sophie rearrange there. As I've said, I'm Fee. I live in Greater Manchester in the UK. I have been knitting on and off for about 16 years. So I was taught how to knit when I was around about 19 or 20 years old. It was my mother-in-law. She wasn't my mother-in-law then, but she taught me how to knit. She's an avid knitter and has knit all her life and knits or she used to knit every single day. She's not around anymore. But she taught me how to knit when I first met her, and I really enjoyed it even then. I know I started off with a scarf. I wanted to knit something that didn't have anything complicated in it, so I could make all my mistakes and figure stuff out. And so I know the first thing I knit was a scarf. I have no idea what it looked like, what color it was, what yarn I used, anything like that. The only thing I do remember is sitting at a bus stop and knitting this scarf and having a group of teenage boys come over to me and ask me what I was doing, and comment about how slow I knit. And even back then, I think it really hit me that, you know, it was something that was bringing people together. It was bringing strangers over to chat to me. And yeah, I really enjoyed that. So that's the only kind of memory I still have of knitting that scarf. And then I made two tops. So I made two, they're both like jumpers. One of them was a sleeveless pullover. I think that was the one that I made first. I don't have it anymore, so I can't show it to you. I will put up here a pattern I found that was the most similar to it that I've got. The yarn, it wasn't quite just completely self-striping, if I remember rightly. It had kind of patterns as well, a bit more Fair Isle style. It was purple and cream. And yeah, I think it turned out okay. I think I must have knit it in sections and sewn it together, because I don't remember doing any circular knitting before picking stuff up again in October of last year. So I think it must have been in sections, but it could have been in the round, and I just don't remember. It was definitely bottom up, because I'd definitely never heard of top down knitting before I started this time. And I wore it quite a lot. So I was a teacher at the time, and I'd wear it quite often with like a white collared shirt underneath for several years. But at some point I must have, you know, given it away. At the time, I really didn't know much about yarn. I had no clue about caring for knits and that sort of thing. I'm pretty sure, looking back, it was acrylic, because I'm pretty sure I put it in the washing machine and it was all fine. But yeah, that was the first thing I ever knit. And then the other thing I knit at that point was a poncho. Again, I'll put a pattern up here of the closest thing I could find to the poncho. Again, I bought it from a local department store, as I also bought the yarn from there. It wasn't this color at all. It was like a mild brown type color, kind of tan, and it had wooden buttons down each side, and I remember enjoying wearing it but finding it quite unwieldy and impractical. I didn't wear it much out. I wore it around the house on the weekend and that sort of thing. And once again, at some point I must have given it away because I don't have it. And once I made those, I put the hobby down and didn't knit again for about 9 years, I would calculate. That tended to be what I did with hobbies up until recently. I would pick up something new, I would get really into it, spend lots of time on it, get to a point where I felt like I knew what I was doing to some extent, and then I would put it down and pick up another hobby. And I've carried on doing that up until around about COVID, I think, and the lockdowns. And since then, I've noticed that the hobbies that I pick up, I tend to stick with, which is another reason that I decided to start this channel, because I know that this knitting this time is a long-term thing, so I couldn't really have that continuity of talking about where I'm up to and what I'm doing. I'm sure, like with most hobbies, you know, there'll be ebbs and flows, and times I'll knit more and times I'll knit less, but I do think knitting is something that I'm going to stick with. So then, the next time I picked up knitting was about 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. We moved up to Manchester. That was when we moved up to Manchester to be closer to family, and we had to sell a flat down south where we lived, and we were looking to buy a house up here, and things fell through, and it ended up we had quite a significant period of time where we didn't have a home, and we lived with my in-laws. So we spent about 10 months living with my in-laws, and again, his mum knits avidly. She was on the sofa every day knitting, and so I would sit and join her and knit as well. And at this point I knitted 2 more jumpers. This time it was with yarn that she gave me. Again, I don't know what type of yarn it was. I'm pretty sure it was from John Lewis, which is a department store in the UK. And she gave me 4 colours of this same yarn, 3 of which were sort of leftovers from things she'd already knitted, and 1 was a sweater quantity of yarn. And I didn't know what the yarn was made up of at the time. I reckon now that it was probably an alpaca blend. It was kind of like chainette style yarn, nice and fluffy, really warm. And the colours were navy blue, a really dark green, forest green colour, a gold colour, and a red. And so the 2 jumpers that I made was a navy blue jumper, which was a sweater quantity with red stripes. And then I made a green cropped jumper with gold edging, which, because I didn't have enough yarn to do a full jumper in those colours. The navy blue one I made, the thing I remember most about that one was that I made the sleeves too long. So I decided halfway through I was going to do some extra stripes on the sleeve, and I did, but I didn't, you know, subtract that length from the sleeve, so my sleeves ended up being quite long. Other than that, I enjoyed it. I really liked to wear it. It was really warm, so I didn't wear it much indoors, but I did wear it on and off. And then just a couple of years ago, it got a hole in it. I'm pretty sure a moth was responsible for that. I, at the time, you know, didn't know that moths were particularly attracted to wool. And then even worse, I decided it was dirty. I put it in the washing machine and absolutely destroyed it. So it was completely felted and shrunk, and it had to be thrown away after that. So that was an interesting learning experience for me. And that's another thing that I've really enjoyed picking up knitting again, is learning more about yarn and how yarn works and the different fibres it can be made up of. And yeah, that's all been really interesting, and it's helped me, YouTube particularly has helped me to understand. There's so many things I'd never done before and I would never have known to do if it wasn't for YouTube. I'd never gauge swatched before, or swatched at all. I'd never I'd never blocked anything. I'd never washed anything other than in the washing machine. So yeah, it's been really great. It's been really helpful. So that's the thing. Oh no, I've got one more, don't I? Yeah, and then the second one was this cropped green top with the same wool, but dark green and gold. And it is the only thing that I still have from my previous life of knitting, and I'll just go get it. So this is it here. As you can see, it's cropped. It's not full length sleeved either. I literally used every single centimetre I could of the dark green yarn, and then I used the gold yarn for edging. I think I used pretty much every centimetre of the gold yarn as well. If I did it again, I would have just made it really short sleeved and just have the edging in gold and not have this divide there. But yeah, that was old me wanting to use up every bit of yarn. Yeah, I still wear it. I don't tend to wear it out that much. I wear it indoors. Oh, I'll put up a video clip here so you can kind of see it on me. Apologies, I'm not the best model in the world, but yeah, hopefully that'll give you an idea of what it looks like. It's got kind of slits on the side in the gold on both the sleeve and the around the waist. The reason being was because I didn't know at the time tubular bind off or tubular cast on or anything like that, and so my mother-in-law taught me a bit of a hack, I think, for making a kind of professional edge. And the way she did it is cast on half the number of stitches you're going to use, relatively loosely. You knit for 6 rows and then you fold it in half, and then in between each knit stitch you pick up the other side, the knit stitch, and you end up with ribbing. And so because you start off with half the number of stitches, it tends to kind of go in at an angle, and so I thought I'd do a slit to kind of exaggerate that and not have the fabric stretch too much. Turns out it is really stretchy, so it could have been absolutely fine, and I don't think anyone would have noticed. But yeah, I quite like the slits anyway. And that is that. After I made this top, oh no, let me just say as well that both these tops were made in sections and sewn together. So the front, the back, and the sleeves are all sewn in. If you look too closely, or if you look very closely, they're sewn in very badly, especially the sleeves. I've not done a great job there. But that was all I really knew how to do. My mother-in-law never used a pattern. She would knit just from her own brain, and she would always do it in bits and sew them together, and so that's how I learned to do it. So both of these were I just cast on, started knitting, and just asked her for guidance on stuff. Yeah, and so that's that. And then I put it down, I got busy, and I didn't knit again for 6 years. And that brings us to October of 2024, when I picked up knitting again. And since then I have knitted like crazy. I've gotten really into it. I started again purely because my daughter asked me to make her a cushion cover. So I thought, oh, why don't I knit it? I've not knit in a while. And then she asked for a blanket, and then I really enjoyed that. So I knit a few blankets. And then I thought, I really like to knit a garment, and I went to YouTube, and the rest is history. So that's sort of my background in knitting. I hope that's not bored you too much. I just wanted to kind of set that out because I'm kind of in this weird stage where I still feel like I'm a beginner, probably an advanced beginner, but I still feel like I'm a beginner because I've only been knitting a few months. I had to teach myself. I got taught by YouTube how to increase and decrease, how to cast on, cast off, all of that. I had to be reminded of. And I've only ever knit stockinette, ribbing or garter stitch. That's all I've ever knit. And so, you know, I've still got so much to learn, and I'm really excited about all the different things out there that I can make. I'd love to do brioche. I'd love to do color work that's not stranded color work, so like mosaic knitting or intarsia knitting. I think that would be great. I have done stranded color work in this new section of my knitting life, and I didn't really enjoy it that much. What other things would I like to do? I'd love to learn to cable. I'd love to learn to do lace work and that kind of thing. I do still prefer stockinette. Like, I just really love the clean look. But at the same time, I'm really excited to learn these new things and to do the occasional thing in textured stuff. I think that would be great. So although I am a beginner, or I feel like I'm a beginner, I have also been knitting on and off for an awfully long time. And so I really wanted to highlight that fact, because I know it's very easy to compare yourself to others when you're doing a hobby, and I didn't want to make it appear like I'd picked knitting up for the first time in October, because just in case there were some people out there that weren't quite as far along as I was, or if I was going a little bit faster in terms of picking stuff up, I didn't want anyone to feel bad about that, because, you know, I have knit before. You know, I think the whole thing is like, everyone goes at their own pace. Everyone, you know, has their own interests and learns different things at different times. And I think that's absolutely brilliant. That's the way it should be. But I also know that it is human nature to compare yourself to others. And so I just wanted to caveat, and I want people to feel positive about watching my videos, and not worry. Which is why I thought it was quite helpful to give you a little bit of my background in knitting. Next, I'd like to talk about acquisitions. It feels a bit odd to me talking about acquisitions when I've not got a point of reference. So normally I'd be saying the things I bought since last video. There is no last video, so what I'm going to do is talk about the things I've bought since the beginning of this month, so in my February budget. I'm going to put a counter here to show, to count down how much I've spent of my £100 budget for the month, so you can see where I'm up to and what I've spent that money on. So the first couple of things I bought at the beginning of the month were 2 patterns. They're both PetiteKnit patterns, the Esther sweater and the Ingrid sweater. The reason being is that I've made several jumpers now, and apologies, I'm going to switch between sweater and jumper a lot, because personally I say jumper, but then I know that a lot of the patterns are called sweater, and we talk about sweater quantities of stuff, so I am going to jump between those two. I've made quite a lot of stockinette jumpers recently, and so I wanted something with a bit of texture, with some sort of pattern to it, and both of these caught my eye. The other reason I bought these 2 patterns in particular is that I knit a PetiteKnit pattern a couple months ago, and so far it's been the jumper that I think suits me best, the jumper that fits best and feels most professionally made, and so I wanted to try a few more of her patterns. I'm going to caveat that with saying I've not bought a lot of patterns or used a lot of patterns, bought or free, and so I'm sure there are loads of designers out there that are just as good, but I've not tried them yet. And yeah, I wanted to try a couple more PetiteKnit patterns, because I felt like odds were that they'd turn out relatively good, despite me being a beginner. However, I've not bought the yarn for either of these patterns. I don't have enough left in the budget for this month to buy that yarn, and so I am going to wait until next month. I will buy the yarn for the Ingrid first, because I have already made a swatch. I bought 1 ball of Drops Lima and 1 ball of Drops Kid Silk mohair, and I did a swatch and I was happy with that yarn. I was a bit nervous about how itchy the mohair would be, but it seems fine on me. I'm not too bothered by itch, and so yeah, I'm happy to use that yarn and to make this jumper. However, I will wait and buy the yarn in March. Then the next, oh, sorry, before I move on, these both cost 50 Danish kroner, which at the time I bought them translated to £5.91. So each of these were £5.91. Then the next thing I did was I bought 2 more patterns. I bought these patterns at the same time as I bought wool for these patterns. So these ones I will do sooner, or hopefully sooner anyway, than the other 2 that I showed before. One of which I've already started, so it's on the needles, and I'll talk about that in my works in progress. And one of which I plan to start after I've finished that first one. So both of them are sleeveless tops. I bought the Fausta Bralette and I bought the Camisole. So the Fausta Bralette is by lowkey.bold.knits. I discovered this from another YouTuber I watched called Ali Makes Everything, and I thought it looked really professional on her, and I really liked how she'd made it a full-length top, and so I'm doing the same thing. I'll talk more about that in the works in progress section. This one costs €7, which translated to £6.18. And the next pattern that I bought was the Camisole. So that's this one here. I decided to do the Fausta one first just because it's a DK weight, whereas the Camisole is fingering weight, and I was a bit nervous about how long it's going to take to do a fingering weight top. But yeah, and the Camisole cost me £5.93. And I plan on knitting that as soon as I've finished the Fausta Bralette. I've got the wool for that as well, so that is the next thing that I need to tell you about, is I bought the yarn for both these projects. So the Fausta Bralette, I bought yarn called Stylecraft Naturals. It is 60% bamboo and 40% cotton, in the colour Pitch, which is black. And I bought 3 balls of these, and they were £5.20 each ball. The pattern recommended 1 ball or 100 grams for my size, but I, 1, wanted to make it longer, and 2, I thought it would be pretty tight. So I bought 3 100-gram balls. So that was £15.60 altogether for that. And then for the Camisole, I bought this Lang Yarns Yowl Silk. It is 50% wool, 25% nylon, and 20% silk yarn, in this dark red colour. It's really nice and quite shiny. I really like this, so I'm quite looking forward to making that, the Camisole with that. That yarn costs £7.25 per 50-gram ball, and I bought 4 of those, so that was £29 in total. So altogether, I spent £68.53 so far this month, and I have £31.47 left over to buy extra stuff. So because I want to make the Ingrid sweater with silk mohair and wool, and because the Ingrid sweater uses quite a lot of yarn because it's textured, then that's not enough to buy all the yarn for that. So what I will probably do is I will get this money to roll over till next month and use that to buy the yarn for this. And that is all the acquisitions that I have for this month. I don't plan on buying anything else this month. If I do, it will be another pattern. The reason being is I bought a couple of plain stockinette jumper patterns now, and I've knit several of them. I think in total I've knit 3. And what I've noticed is, particularly with raglans, that they don't sit quite right. Like I get quite, it bunches up sometimes here, and I would like to try a pattern with a compound raglan to see if that will sit nicer on my shoulders. And I found a pattern on Ravelry. I will put it up here because I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, which is a compound raglan, and it is a chunky knit, so hopefully it'll go a bit faster than some of the ones I'm making at the moment. So I'm keen to do that at some point soon. I know I said that I wanted to do something textured, and then I'm showing you another stockinette, but stockinette really is kind of what I enjoy wearing the most, so I feel like I'll get the most use out of it. I have 4 works in progress on my needles at the moment. I'm going to start off with small to large, so I'm going to talk you through my socks that I'm making. Then I'm going to talk you through my Fausta Bralette, the sleeveless top, and then I will talk through my jumper, which is a balloon sweater. So the first pair of socks, I've got 2 of them on my needles at the moment that I'm making, is, you can't see very much, they are a plain vanilla sock. They're yellow with purple, a bunch of ends. They're yellow with purple heel and toe. They are a bit of a mixture. So when I first started knitting again in October, the first pattern I downloaded was a sock pattern. It was the, bear with me, it was the Standard Sock by Carly Perrins, and it's a toe-up construction sock. And I made a couple of socks with that pattern, and then I decided I wanted to try a cuff down pattern, because I found with the toe-up ones it was really hard to cast off, both loose but also looking clean and not too baggy. And so I wanted to try a cuff down, and so I just started knitting one. I didn't have a pattern I was going to follow. I think I was going to buy the Crazy Sock Ladies vanilla sock pattern, but I thought I'd cast on first, you know, because to start with, you're doing a vanilla sock, just a cuff and then some knitting, but and the important bits really is the heel and the toe. And then I just kind of left it for quite a while, so I found it a little bit boring knitting on small needles, 2.75 needles they were, stockinette constantly in a plain yellow colour. Again, it's not my favourite colour either, so I bought several balls of Yarn Smith's merino sock yarn, which is from Wool Warehouse online. I think it's their own brand, or I think you can only get it there anyway. And it was on sale, so I bought 1 ball. I bought this purple one actually, and made some socks for myself. And then I bought some more in order to gift knit something for Christmas for someone. I was going to make them like a bag. It was going to be cream with some flowers on it. So I bought some different colours for that. But then they asked me, like they specifically asked for something for Christmas, and I wanted to get them what they wanted. So I ended up with this sock yarn. So I thought what I would do is I would practice knitting socks, because my first sock that I ever made wasn't great. It was a little bit too loose. It was too short around the ankle. And so I cast on this without a pattern. And about a month later, I bought a book, The Sock Project by Summer Lee, and this book had a bunch of different ways of doing heels. That's kind of the main reason I bought it, was because I wanted to learn different ways to do the heel, to see which one I liked the best. And so I thought I'd use this sock because I'd already started knitting it to try the afterthought heel, because I'd not done that. I made a few socks with the what's it called, heel flapping gusset, and so I thought I'd use this one to make the afterthought heel. It took me ages because this was always a pattern that I had in the background that I just did when I had nothing else. It took me probably 3 months to make this first sock, and I just finished it yesterday, and I've started on the second one. So far I prefer the heel flapping gusset to the afterthought heel, but it's not too bad. Again, because I cast this on before I had any proper sock patterns, before I knew what needle sizes I like best, etc, etc, then it's not ideal. It's a little bit too loose. I gave these to my husband. He likes them, but it is a little bit too loose. It fits his foot, to be fair, but it's really loose around his ankle. So it's not ideal, but I had already cast on and knitted, a way down, and I didn't want to restart it, and I thought it's good practice. So yeah, 2.75mm needles it was, and I think in the future I'm going to use 2.5. So I've made a couple of socks with 2.25, a couple with 2.5, and one with 2.75, one with 3, and I definitely prefer 2.5. I feel like it's a good middle ground between not being too loose, but also knitting up a little bit faster than 2.25. So yeah, that's my vanilla sock, or the afterthought heel sock, I think, which comes from the Camisole book. Have I told you everything about it? So it's 75% merino, 25% nylon. It is fingering weight. I do really like it. It's soft. It's got a 2x2 ribbed cuff. I normally do a 1x1. Well, I say normally, not that I've made loads, but I thought I'd try something different. So it's a 2x2 ribbed cuff, and they're for my husband. Then the second sock that I'm knitting, again, I've just started the second one, is another sock pattern from the Camisole book, or at least I'm going off of that book, and it is a ribbed sock. So here we go. This is the first one, and this is the second one. I found very quickly that I prefer self-striping yarn for socks. It helps make it go faster. I feel like socks sometimes can get a little bit dull because you're on such tiny needles that it feels like it takes ages, especially the foot bit. So self-striping just helps it go faster, I think, psychologically, because you can do the next stripe and the next stripe. I also quite like it because there are lots of bright colours of self-striping yarn, and you can just buy like one ball and it doesn't break the bank, but also you can use all these colours, but you don't need to worry too much because you're not wearing a garment that's like really garish. It's just socks that are garish, which, people aren't going to notice as much. So yeah, however, I have knit now a couple of pairs of socks in plain colours, and they're the ones I wear more than the striped ones, because they can kind of go with more stuff. So I may be kind of leaning back towards plain coloured socks again in the future, but for now I really like the self-striping. This is Cascade Heritage Prints sock yarn. Again, it's fingering weight. Again, it's 75% merino, 25% nylon. It's in the colour Grape Press, and yeah, I like it. I definitely find ribbed socks fit better than vanilla socks. The reason being, both me and my husband, I think that our ankles are relatively small compared to the ball of our feet, and so with a vanilla sock, if it fits around the ball of your foot, which is what the measurement's normally a 4, then it's quite loose right at the ankle, so then it slides down and it just slouches around your ankle, which I don't like. This is the second pair of ribbed socks I've done, and they seem to fit much better, so I do think I'll do more of these. I do like them. I'm not a huge fan of these colours, to be honest. I think they look better on the ball than they do on knitted up on the sock. But you know, you live and learn, and I really wanted to try out different sock yarns, and Cascade was one of the brands that I wanted to try their sock yarn. So yeah, I'm glad I bought it, but it's not my favorite colour in the world anyway. But then neither is the yellow and purple. I think that's quite clownish, to be honest. But yeah, my husband doesn't mind. He really loves bright coloured socks. And so, yeah, those are my socks. So the next thing I'll talk about is the Fausta Bralette by lowkey.bold.knits. That's here. It is basically plain 2x2 rib. What I did was I measured my hips. The pattern tells you that, you know, the design is meant to have a certain percentage of negative ease. So I measured my hips, worked out how many extra stitches I would need to have an equivalent amount of negative ease at that point. And I also worked out what extra length I wanted, so I knew how many rows, or per how many rows I needed to decrease to get to where I needed to by the time the pattern actually starts. And that's where I'm at now. So I got to where the pattern actually starts. I've knitted all the extra, and I'm about 4 centimeters in to the main pattern. I'm okay with how I've increased it. I think if I did it again, I've often wondered why patterns, like, they don't decrease the very last stitch. They kind of have a row or 2 rows and then they decrease that before that. I didn't do that for this one because I wanted to look like, you know, you'd sewn some fabric together. And it looks okay. It does look okay. But I think if I were to do it again, I might have like a row on each side straight up and then decrease on the second stitch towards the end instead. I think I've already mentioned this is 3mm needles, Stylecraft Naturals wool, which is 60% bamboo, 40% cotton. It's in the colour Pitch, which is a black colour. It's 2x2 ribbing all the way, and it's really nice and soft. I'm really enjoying it. It is going slower than lots of other knits I've done, but it's quite fun. I do enjoy it. I quite like knitting with cotton. At first I really liked knitting with cotton, and I didn't understand why people preferred wool to cotton, because I thought cotton could be so soft. Like really cheap cotton in not supermarkets, in like department stores can be quite ropey, but quite a lot of cotton yarn that I bought online has been like really nice and soft, or in wool shops has been really nice and soft. But I've just started to figure out why it is, because cotton really doesn't have very much give, so it can hurt your hands after a while. So yeah, there is kind of that way off between the wool is really nice and soft, or the yarn's really nice and soft, but also it does hurt your hands because there's not the give that wool has while you're knitting. Do I need to say anything else about this? It's got an interesting design where there's 2 different types of sizes. So instead of just doing a small or a medium, you've got a numbered size, which comes from your underbust measurement. So I think it's 1 to 15. And I was a size 4. And then you measure around your bust and work out the difference between your underbust and your bust. And then from that it gives you a cup size of A, B, C, D, etc. The cup sizes don't match the UK cup sizes anyway, so they're not the same A, B, C as you would get in a shop, at least not in the UK. But But yeah, they are kind of a cup size because you're measuring your chest versus your underbust. And so I am a 4A, and so that's the size I'm making. The pattern recommends 100 grams, but I bought 300 grams just to be sure, and because I'm making it extra lengthy. It's a bottom up, which is the first time in my new knitting life that I've done a bottom up, barring when I first started and I tried to make something out off the top of my head, because that is what I'd done before. And I quickly realised that I needed to understand a little bit better before I could just design things off the top of my head. And I didn't have my mother-in-law to ask anymore about that sort of thing, so I am figuring it out for myself. I still do want to make some stuff off the top of my head, and I do have the wool for it, but I wanted to like see quite a few patterns first so I can get an idea of how best to do it. So yeah, bottom up, which is interesting, and yeah, I think that's everything. So quite enjoying it, going a bit slower than other big projects I've done, but I'm getting used to it, and I need to get used to it if I want to do a finger and weight project next. And my final project that's on my needles at the moment, apologies, the needles are being quite loud, and that is the balloon sweater by PetiteKnit. So this one I'm using 4mm needles for, and that's what the pattern suggests. I'm making a size medium, so I've actually made another one of these previously. It was one of the first patterns I saw when I got back into knitting that I really wanted, and I really liked the idea of doing it in like this cloud light grey colour. And it took me a while to find the yarn. Eventually I did find some yarn for it, but I was a bit nervous because it was quite expensive yarn, and I didn't want to, and it was going to be the first jumper I made, and so I decided I was going to buy some other yarn that was less expensive, make it once in that, make all my mistakes, or make sure I read through the pattern properly and get all the way through, and then I'd make it again in this special yarn that I actually bought with money from my birthday last year. Turns out that I loved that top, and I did that in a Drops Sky, and yeah, it turned out really well. I love it. I wear it all the time. It's great. But now I've started this second one. So the yarn that I'm doing it with, it's my first time I've done two yarns held together, and I'm holding together two lace weights, which is not what the pattern suggests. It suggests a fingering and a lace weight, which makes up a DK gauge. However, one of the lace weights I think is quite close to a fingering, so it turned out fine. So the first one is Sadness Garn, Alpaca Fölgetrad. I'm going to pronounce all these things really terribly, so I apologize for that. And it's supposed to be, I think, like a replacement for silk mohair. It's not nearly as fluffy as mohair, but it is in a light grey. It's in a light grey colour, and I just really liked it. It was really soft, and it was just the colour I wanted. So I got 3 balls of that, and then the mohair I used Biche et Bouche, Le Petite silken mohair, again because it was very soft, and I really liked the feel of it, and I thought the colours went well together, and that's also in light grey. So those are the 2 yarns that I'm using. It's a mock net construction. It is, as you can probably guess by the name, it's balloon sleeves, so they're straight and then they go down really quickly at the end. It's slightly oversized, with, can't remember exactly the positive ease, but I think it's like 6 to 10 inches of positive ease, that kind of thing. It's a drop shoulder construction as well, which I actually really like. I think they're my favourites, even though I've made a couple of raglans, but I do quite like the drop shoulders. And yeah, so far it seems to be going okay. My only thing I'm a bit nervous about was when I did the drop sky one, I had to go up a needle size, which meant that the edging, which this one is in 3mm, that one was in 4mm, ended up being quite a lot looser. And so this one feels like quite tight around my neck, and I hope it's not too tight. But I do know even with the drop sky, which is a very light yarn, once I'd done the sleeves, it did stretch it out a little bit. So I'm hoping the same thing will happen with this one and it won't be too tight around my neck. But other than that, it seems to be going okay. I'm doing the size medium. My previous one I did the size small, so I thought I'd be a bit different. And also I was a little bit worried my gauge was a little bit too tight, so I thought I'd do the size medium just to be sure. I tend to be in between a size small and a size medium. That's what I think anyway. So yeah, I'm on the first sleeve at the moment. I've done the body, and I've not done the full body, but what I tend to do is I do like the sleeve whole, and then I knit the body until I run out of yarn, and then instead of going on to the next ball of yarn, I'll stop there and start the sleeves, and once the sleeves are done, then I'll carry on and finish the body. So I've just started the first sleeve, and it's going quite slowly. Again, 4mm needles going noticeably slower than 5mm needles that I've done in the previous pattern, or the previous time I've used this pattern. But no, I'm really looking forward to this one being done, and I'm quite excited. I have noticed in the last few jumpers that I've made is even when I do a gauge swatch, the jumper knits up smaller than the gauge swatch suggests it will. I'm not really sure why. Interestingly, the PetiteKnit one didn't. It knitted up exactly the pattern size, which I think was about 42 and point something inches. But this one, for example, is about 2 to 3 inches smaller than the gauge would recommend. And I made another one that was also like noticeably smaller. I think also because I used a lighter yarn, so it didn't stretch out as much. But that could have been part of the problem. But yeah, another reason why I decided to go up a size, just in case it ended up knitting up small. One of the things I decided to do when I got back into knitting again this time was to find out what wool shops were near me. So at some point I just went to Google Maps and I googled yarn shops near me, and I've slowly been doing mini road trips out to anything sort of within the Greater Manchester area to see kind of what types of yarns. And I was really keen to sort of get a feel for different yarns, because loads of the yarn that I've bought up till now has been online, and you don't know what it feels like until you've already bought it. So I've kind of been buying one ball with different things to get a feel for what's out there. And it's really nice to be able to go to an actual shop and feel them without, you know, having to buy the balls, and decide what you want after you know what they feel like, which is really great. I've had loads of fun doing it. And one of the shops that I found was in South Manchester, called A Tangled Yarn. That's where I got the yarn for my balloon sweater from. It's got loads of interesting yarn brands and things that I'd like to try out. It's got things like Cama Rose, Schnepnug, Sandnesgarn, and other interesting ones like that. I think that's everything. I'm sure I will have forgotten some things. As I've talked to you, in my head I've gone, oh, I need to remember to say this, I need to remember to say this, and then now I can't think of it. So I'm sure there'll be other stuff, but I can either add it in post or save it to another video, or, you know, it might just not be very important at all. But I'm really grateful if you stuck around to the end. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope you'll come back and watch my other videos. My next one I plan to do Everything I Knit in 2024. And yeah, I hope you have a really good day, and all the best until I see you again.